There's that laugh. Everybody loves that laugh. What are the chances we would find the Flamingo Road theme? All right, here we go. Oh, look at the beautiful flamingo has landed. Hello, Morgan Fairchild.
Hello, coming in for a landing this morning.
Fresh off your rave reviews for Happy Hour. I told people you're the smartest and prettiest and nicest lady in Hollywood, and you're a big nerd. And people were like, best Happy Hour ever. So thank you.
Very kind of them. Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I claim to be a big nerd.
And yet you look the same as on Flamingo Road, and we should hate you, but we don't. Oh, and Chris wasn't here for Happy Hour, so he wanted to tell you something.
Well, no, she and I talked. Yes, her role as an evil calendar publisher is part of the reason I went to Arizona State University in Campus Man. Yes.
Always in my headlines. So.
And is there a good calendar publisher? I don't think so. I think they're all evil, Morgan.
Yes.
Have we ever discussed, I think we have, why is it that the nicest people in Hollywood play the evil characters the best?
Well, that's nice of you to say. It's kind of funny. It's like to be an evil person on screen, you have to be willing to let people hate you. And that's kind of a rare quality in an actor. Most actors want to be loved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to throw caution to the wind and say, hey, who gives a damn? So
let's talk about actual monsters. Did you happen to watch the press conference yesterday or hear about it?
I unfortunately did watch it, yes.
It is particularly, having a madman in charge at this particular point, but that doesn't believe in science. And again, as we talked about on the Happy Hour, you've been, testifying on the Hill and elsewhere about infectious disease ever since the AIDS crisis. And I'm sure you saw Ron Klain, who I know you know, on TV last night, and he said literally everything he said in that press conference was a lie. I mean, it's... Right, and then we watch this propaganda film, and it just is. As he said, the inspectors general, two of them, said that they did exactly the right thing in the H1N1. This thing that he keeps repeating about it was a disaster, and it's so ridiculous in the midst of this ongoing pandemic to be talking about something in the Obama years, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, each big epidemic going into pandemic is its own creature, but you do have certain kinds of protocols that you can put in place, and the Obama administration and Mr. Klain did put protocols in place. I mean, each time something like this happens, you try to learn from it, and so that you don't let that particular problem happen again. And I think one of the outgoing Obama people said we left them a pandemic for dummies platform there, booklet that they apparently never sat out and read. So it's very unfortunate because at this point it's no longer left or right or conservative or liberal. This is people dying. And you don't want to play around with that. It's not a time to play political games. When he started running that video yesterday, it's a violation of everything. Hatch Act in the world to try to run a campaign propaganda video in the middle of a pandemic briefing.
Well, he's also stealing the state's supplies in the middle of a pandemic. So there's so many layers of criminality.
He's stealing supplies and giving them to states that he needs to win in November.
There's so many literally daily impeachable, illegal, I don't even know which anymore, offenses, aren't there? Yeah. Did you read the New York Times piece as you were just talking, Morgan? I was thinking the one thing that struck me is, you've been talking about this for years. You know Dr. Fauci very well. Oh, by the way, my brother-in-law went to Holy Cross with him. My brother-in-law's a orthopedic surgeon, but he knows him and just everybody talks about what a great guy he is. But anyway, but this line about we've thrown away 15 years of the Red Dawn emails. They're talking about, you're right, they planned for this. They did the Crimson Contagion exercises. They had the pandemic playbook. They had the pandemic response team that was started with Bush. And then Obama handed them all this, and they destroyed all of it, right?
Well, yes, and then he and Bolton decided to disband the group that was there in the White House just to deal with this kind of thing, the whole pandemic defense group. And so I just, the mind boggles at the stupidity. and the lack of caring. I mean, first of all, it's stupid and you don't believe in science. But second of all, do you care about your own voters who tend to be in an older and more vulnerable demographic? Do you care that they die? This thing that they pulled this week, last week, about the forcing people in Wisconsin to go stand in line to vote, or yeah, and risk death to go vote, and the fact that so many of them did. Thank you, Wisconsin, for showing that people do care about their vote instead of just being rolled over by this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't even know where to start with. I mean, I think the problem is you understand this snake oil salesman selling false hope, for basically his whole life, but trying to do it now because we all want out of this, right? We're all human beings. But, the more and more you listen, right, and we talked a little bit after the happy hour just about, what's next. I mean, I do have faith in Gavin Newsom and this consortium of Western states, and also, they're doing it in the East as well. But because they said we're going to be led by science and data,
Yeah.
And obviously we've been doing it right here in California, but it is terrifying to think that they literally now are taking this on the right. We were talking about on Fox News and saying, oh, see, this was all overblown. Look, see, it's nowhere near as bad as they said. And it's because of what we're doing. All you have to do is look at one chart or graph or any country around the world to know why this is working.
And this is a virus that they keep finding out new things about. It's a very unique, as they say, virus, and it has strange properties. And one thing, as long as we're talking about the virus with your listeners, I would like to sort of stress some of the new things they found out. Obviously, more men are dying of it than women. They're not sure why. In China, when they first noticed it, they thought perhaps it was because Chinese men smoked more, but they're continuing to see it in other countries. That more men tend to actually die from it than women, and also new studies coming out showing that you can pick it up on your shoes. I'm just saying, for people who go shopping at the grocery store, try to disinfect your shoes when you come home. Now, the studies they're seeing this in are in hospitals, where obviously people are getting a huge dose of it. Because they're working in contaminated areas, but they started finding it like in the pharmacies and stuff in hospitals, and realizing that doctors, even with the booties and everything, were tracking it.
Yeah.
And so you want to, like, when you get home, take your shoes off and leave them outside, or
Yep.
Lysol spray or Lysol wipes or whatever bleach thing you're using. Use it on an old pair of shoes if you're using bleach, so that you can disinfect when you come home. They're just, and that it's more aerosolized than they first thought. I mean, 3 feet, like they were saying at first, to talk to someone is not so good. Really, everybody should be wearing a mask, because they're realizing that every time you speak, it's not just coughing or sneezing. It's every time you speak, it's going out into the atmosphere around you. So, it's interesting walking my neighborhood. Everybody's got masks on now, and
Yeah.
everybody's 50 feet away across.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, well, that's the only thing I'm doing is hiking or biking outside, but I am like way more than 6 feet away, because you're right. I mean, anything could be a risk. Like you say, they're saying, if someone sneezes at a velocity and there's wind, I mean, there's always an if or whatever, but and so obviously you have to weigh your risk, but clearly, like, stay at home generally means stay at home. Like I say, as you know, they're saying here, don't even, if you don't have to, don't go to a store, because I think that's the thing that's different about this virus, Morgan, right? Is just not how, first of all, how deadly it is. Because you are seeing stories about perfectly healthy people that are dead within a day or two, but also how contagious it is. And
more contagious than they initially thought.
Right.
And that's one of the scary things. So, you do want to make sure you're really disinfecting things. I mean, on being on Twitter, I'm still having people send me pictures of people out gathering, and one person tonight said they'd been invited in their neighborhood to a couple of parties and barbecues at their neighbor's house. And I can't believe at this stage that people are still being so actually thoughtless about their own health, but actually everyone else's. That's the main thing, is that they've seen is that one person, a lot of these things started like in the nursing home in Washington, but also like in New Rochelle, at a synagogue. One person, two people coming in and being around a group of people. And that's why you're seeing it in some churches and things like this. There was one thing in LA Times last week about a choir practice. People came for choir practice. They stayed 6 feet away. They did all the right things. And yet, out of the 60, 45 people came down with it, and several died. And so you can't keep doing the things that you love to do, and that's one of the hard things for people to get into their heads, is that just give it some time, get to know your family again, write your book, do stupid stuff on TikTok.
On it. We're on it.
Yeah.
Find something to do with yourself that can entertain you. Hey, read a book. Play solitaire. But just don't feel that you must go mix and mingle.
But Morgan, now take off your infectious disease hat and put on your evil calendar publisher hat. Because as human beings, we don't want to believe the worst, but you have to think it's deliberate, him holding the testing down, because we are not testing. We are still at way less than 1% of the population. And it is, as you know, we have got to test. We've got to know who's asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic before we're going to be able to solve the economic crisis or get back to work. And obviously we need the antibody. And I think we still don't know, do we? Even if you have had it and recovered, does that mean you have immunity, or could you be reinfected?
Well,
right?
That's one thing they're discovering too that's very odd about this virus, and they started seeing it when they were releasing people in China and South Korea from the hospital. Said it had it, they tested negative. They get out of the hospital a week or two later, they're testing positive again. And so, number one, they don't know if it's going to give immunity. Number two, they're seeing that they don't know if it's that the virus is getting reactivated or if they're being reinfected. And number three, when they're finding that very low doses of antibodies in people's blood, meaning that the antibody dose is so low that they may not be able to have immunity from the virus. But one thing they're finding is that older people manufacture more antibody. So hey, I'm in good shape.
No, you're gonna trick the virus, because they're gonna be like, no, she looks exactly like she did on Dallas and Flamingo Road.
But that's the thing, is that they don't really know if people who've had it are really going to be able to go back to work and be immune to it, or actually be plasma donors. You've got to have a high enough titer of the antibody in your blood to actually help somebody else out. So these are all things that they're sort of finding out, and it's kind of scary.
Well, and we really, so that's why they're saying, it's going to be when we get a vaccine, because if sooner we get a cure, I think the other problem is, like you say, we don't know why some people only get mild symptoms and are fine, and other people are dead within a day. So, people would have to say, it's okay, I'm going to risk getting it and hoping the cure works for me, right? So and the vaccine, I know Johnson & Johnson was, somebody was on last night, they're working, obviously every scientist in the world is working overtime on this, so you have to hope maybe the vaccine could be sooner. But that, as you know, Morgan, there's still only a finite, it's still going to be at least a year, isn't it? The vaccine.
Even Johnson & Johnson last night were saying they were going to start the first stage, and there's 3 stages of getting a vaccine. The first stage tests in September, which means it would still be at least a year away by the time they do the second and third stages to finish the test. But, that's the thing, to try to start opening work up again before you have good testing in place. And one thing I'm just outraged about, and I'm sure a lot of people have been following this, is the way Trump left everybody, told the governors they were on their own. And Jared Kushner gets up and say, no, that's our stockpile. That's not to share. Then start ordering things, and FEMA steps in and takes the orders.
Yeah.
So
he's actively making it worse every day, as bad as this is, Morgan. That must, for all your testifying on this and knowledge about it, to see them doing the opposite, to see him going, oh, it's very tricky, it out-tricked the antibiotic, when you're like, I'm a moron that tells fart jokes in my basement. I know that antibiotics don't cure viruses. Like, it's just the most basic science, right? That is, and also, this authoritarian, like, they're handling it the same way as China. Like, Rick DeSantis won't tell. There's obviously a huge amount of nursing homes. As someone, my mom's not in a nursing home, but is 97. They won't even tell people which nursing homes have outbreaks in Florida and the number of people in nursing homes. That's why they're way undercounting the death toll, because they're not able to test to know all these people died of coronavirus. And as Dr. Fauci said, they're not dying of the underlying diseases. It's COVID.
Well, that's another thing they're seeing. They're seeing a lot of heart attacks. And it seems like this virus not only attacks the lungs, but it also attacks the heart and the kidneys, which people didn't see coming with the respiratory virus. And so they're seeing a lot of heart attacks. New York, the EMTs are having like 3 times and 4 times as many heart attacks to go take care of. And they think they're not actually, in true sense, heart attacks, but that they are the virus attacking. And it's also creating a lot of blood clot problems. So they think it may be contributing to strokes and stuff like that. But it's attacking in ways nobody's ever seen a respiratory virus really attack before. So it's very scary. But also you need that antibody test before you start seeing people back to work. Even if you don't have the vaccine yet, they're working really hard to try to find some drugs that can work on this, existing drugs that may have. But also, you can't send people back to work without a good antibody test to see what you're sending them into. There's one of my friends was talking to me about something about Vegas, and I was saying, God, you're not going to open up Vegas. And it's like, and I saying, how on earth would you think of doing that? Well, we'd take their temperatures, and I'm like, no, that's not going to work, because people can be asymptomatic. That's another thing they're seeing with this virus that's so weird. You have 3 types. You have your asymptomatic, your pre-symptomatic, which is somebody who's not showing but is going to go into it, and then you have people who are deathly ill, and then you have those weird people that get it and it's very mild, which seems to be actually not weird, but the majority. They don't know. It may be a genetic thing that people who just go down with it and die from it. They still don't know what tips it that way.
Yeah. It is scary times, but you make everything better. Just saying.
That is true.
Thank you, honey. You're hiking a lot?
Yes, but I mean, first of all, this is making me feel better about my own horrible social life. Because everyone has a horrible social life now. But yes, that's all I do is hike and bike. That's the only time I go out. And I make sure it's like way more than 6 feet away. I mean, we're lucky in LA, I guess, in California, right, that we have nice weather and that we aren't as packed in, that it's a little easier to do at least the 6 foot distancing.
Well, yeah, it's easier. And, back in March, because I would go out for these 20-minute walks every day. And I started taking pictures of flowers and putting them on Twitter. And I was so surprised. Twitter and Instagram, people love the flowers. And I started doing that. There's so many people, it's still cold back east. And, people are in apartments in New York where they really can't get out. Yeah. And trying to bring some springtime to people and a little joy. And, hey, there's life after and there's rebirth. And I've been very touched at how many people say, I look forward to your flowers every day. Who knew?
Yeah. Well, you know what? If a pretty flower could be a human, it would be you.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I still get those guys saying, hey, where are the lingerie shots?
Work it for the pandemic, sister.
Oh, and you should have won Worst Cooks in America. Just saying.
Yeah.
I should have, because I am damn right the worst cook.
Well, you can't be everything. You can't be smart and pretty and nice and also a good cook. So, yeah, that's what God gave you, that one, deficit, so that people don't kill you. All right. I love you, Morgan Fairchild.
Love you.
Thanks
love you guys.
Thanks,
Morgan.